Live from an occupied nation's capital, you're in the war room. It's the 53rd day of the occupation. Raheem, how many days would be without an unaccompanied press conference by Joe Biden?
That's a good question.
Okay,
I think it's 41 we're at now, and Politico finally taking note this morning as well. 40 days and 3 hours.
Politico, obviously watching, they picked up on Raheem's new screed about the 40 days of no press conference unaccompanied. He's kind of an unaccompanied minor, right, when he's up there. 53 days of the occupation, though. Still haven't gotten any word. I don't know if the Republicans are frightened to get the information. We're going to find all that out. It's Monday, the 1st of March, the year of our Lord, 2021, is the 9th anniversary of the death of the great Andrew Breitbart. And later on, Jason Jones, one of his closest friends, is going to be joining us, Raheem Ghassan and myself, and talk about that later in the show. Now with over almost 38.5 million downloads in the podcast. Remember, the podcast is like the fifth way of distribution. We're on the John Fredericks radio network nationwide, Real America's Voice, the streaming service of the Trump Revolution and the Trump Movement. That is Dish Channel 219 up on the satellite, at Comcast 113. I want to give a particular shout-out to Howard Diamond, Rob Sig. The Real America's Voice team, I think, wall-to-wall had the single best coverage of CPAC, an incredible logistics effort, and just great content. And I really got to give a hat tip for yesterday when President was a couple hours late and they fill up the time perfectly. And then to cover it and then have the post-game, it was fantastic. We're going to talk a lot about the President's speech. Also on Rumble, Gab, Roku, Vizio, Pluto, Telegram, we're ubiquitous. You can get this show everywhere. It comes to you wherever you are. Also, it's subtitled and translated into Mandarin on G News and GTV for the 250 million Chinese that are trying to live free outside of the mainland China, outside of their homeland. It's for the diaspora. And also blown through the firewall later to Lao Beijing, to the Chinese deplorables, right, that we are there to assist in their freedom as they fight for their freedom every day. Jason Jones actually coming on not just for a tribute to Andrew Breitbart. He's got an amazing new article up in stream.org about how Christian bookstores and Christian places where you can get books and products, etc., may inadvertently be selling product made by the slave labor of China. We're going to get into all that with Jason Jones, one of the great leaders of the evangelical Christian movement and the conservative Catholic movement, one of the biggest guys in the Right to Life. Very big day for us today as we expand out with John Fredericks, our partner on radio. Remember, you can get this show on TV, you can get this show on live streaming, you can get this show on cable, you can get this show on the satellite, you can get it in all the different methodologies. I'm a big believer in put it out there, meet people where they are. We're also on radio, on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on his app nationwide, and today, the first day of launching our new station, WMLB, 1690 AM in Metro Atlanta. We're honored to be in Georgia, particularly. I'm a kid from Norfolk and Richmond, Virginia, so always had tremendous admiration for Georgia and the metro area of Atlanta. We wanted to start this show today with a very, very special guest. We're honored to have one of the great patriots and great Americans in this country, and I think unarguably the greatest athlete ever to come out of Georgia, and one of the greatest athletes in the history of this republic, Herschel Walker. Herschel, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I want to get right into it because over the weekend I was telling people I think we can get Herschel Walker, and what everybody was telling me, can Herschel just give us where he thinks, given weeks of the Biden administration, and given the tough election we had on November 3rd, the intensity of that, the intensity of the after period, particularly in Georgia, of this fight to kind of close the Trump victory, and all the issues that came up there, many that are still unresolved. Where does Herschel Walker think the country is right now? Where do you think the United States of America, where do you think we are right now?
Well, this country right now is in a confusion. They're totally confused of what's really going on. The Biden administration, instead of worrying about what is great for America, I think they've been very concerned about trying to remove everything Trump done for this country, which is very, very sad because the people were prospering, the people were doing a lot of great things. And right now, the first minute he got into office, first thing he started doing is executive orders to remove a lot of the things that Trump has done that was great for this country. One of the things I keep telling people is what is bad about wanting what's best for your country? And I'm not saying you shouldn't want what's best for China. If you live in China, that's what you should want. But you should want what's best for America. And it's sad that this country is in a state of confusion. They don't understand the leadership in Washington with the Biden administration, and also a lot of our elected officials that now have gotten in who assume that they can change everything about this Constitution. And, you know, when you elect people to office, I thought that the Constitution should hold strong to everything about this country. But, you know, you have people in Washington that have forgotten all about that. And I think it's sad. It's very, very sad that people do not want to do that. And I think it's up to the people now to say, guys, we're not going to stand for this. I think when we elect someone into the United States of America, when we elect them into office, they should believe in America. I'm not saying you shouldn't help other people, but you should believe in America. Right now, the Biden administration is trying to take away everything that the people have. They're trying to break the people down. They're trying to break you down. They're trying to take your religion away. They're trying to take your speech away. They're trying to take your guns away. They're trying to remove everything to break the people down and let the people think that the government is better at raising you than you are at raising yourself. And that's what's sad. The government, you can't continue to give people handouts. You can't continue to, it's going to be the haves and the have-not. And I think that's what is so sad in this country, and that's what I think is starting to upset people. I think people are in a state of confusion. They don't understand what's really going on. But, one of the things I've been saying for a long time, what's sad to me is politicians, when they're running for office, they say all these great things. But I say, you got to see through that. You got to cut through all those great things and see what the truth is. And they should have saw that Biden had been in office for years, but never done anything. And they should have saw also that I'm not sure his health is up to the standards or doing anything. And I think people can see that today. When you have a press secretary that can't even answer a question, don't want to answer a question, they get mad when you ask a question that is very difficult. What is going on in this country right now? I think it's confusion.
Let me ask you, let's drill in on a second. You're a very successful entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, specifically, the Biden administration, do you think it's because President Trump built this Trump movement around working class people and entrepreneurs? As an entrepreneur, talk about the policies or talk about how you think Biden's either making it better for you as an entrepreneur or worse for you as an entrepreneur?
Oh, he's making it worse for entrepreneurs, especially for a small business like myself, even though I'm sort of like a small, large business. I'm in the food service business. But, the first thing they talk about is $15 an hour. A lot of small companies, they can't afford $15 an hour. And I don't think a lot of large companies can afford that as well. And I think they know this, that once you start going to $15 an hour, the people that's going to put out of work is going to be your people that need the job. And I don't think they even realize that. It's sort of like they haven't done research, they haven't done anything. And all they're doing is they're trying to go out and really just make the people, they're trying to get the people so upset because the people not going to work. Under this Trump administration, people were working, not just a certain race. Everybody was working, everybody was happy. There was nobody out there in a state of confusion except the people in Washington that trying to bring the confusion to the people. Why is the people in Washington trying to divide people? The Trump administration, people can say what they want to say, all this about racism and all that. They're trying to pull this cover over everyone's eyes. Everyone was working, everyone was getting taken care of. We were becoming a country that was self-efficient. And right now, we're starting to go back to depending on someone else, which is sad. Right? And, people talk about this virus, whether China brought the virus or not, and it's been proven that they did. Why are we now going back to depending on other countries to solve our problems? And I think that's a shame.
Herschel, I'm going to talk confusion. We got about 4 minutes left, but I want to break it down twofold. You saw President Trump yesterday give this speech at CPAC. Do you believe that is the beginning of putting through a counter narrative of really what President Trump's second term would have been about, but actually give us guidance to 2022 and beyond? Do you think the confusion that he led to some semblance of clarity in your mind by what he laid out yesterday?
Well, I think he added some clarity to it by people opening their eyes up. And I think what Biden and his administration did is they opened people's eyes up because, they didn't do anything they said they were going to do for this country. They sort of went backwards. And yesterday, Trump just started talking about it, made the people become aware of it. One of the things now is, people not having the right to speak. So I think shows like yourself that you have, that people can speak the truth and it get out. People don't know what's really going on. And yes, it's an opportunity to talk about some things that people need to think about. Right now, whether we're going to get back into wars, that was not. And then, people keep forgetting that Trump was nominated for, 5 Nobel Prize from other countries.
Yes.
People forgetting about that.
Yes.
That means a lot.
For the
because
Middle
these
East
other
peace.
countries
Yep.
didn't have a dog in this fight.
Yep.
And people don't even want to acknowledge that. I'm not acknowledging what Trump did. Trump was doing some great things for this country. And people say, Herschel, you're for Trump. He's a racist. It's like, where are they getting this from? They're getting it from the people in Washington that didn't want to do their job. Because if you look at the Constitution give every man the right to be free, give every man the right to have those the good things that America offers. But the people that went to Washington didn't fight for that. They don't want to fight for the Constitution. It's too hard to fight for that. Let's create other things. Well, you know what? Biden is too old to create other things. And some of the people in Washington had been there too long to create other things. They should have done that a long time ago. I think the movement of Trump right now is getting new people in that care about America. You look at the gender thing that's going on right now. Right now, should every man that can't make it as a man in the Olympics now, let's change and be a woman and go out and control the Olympics? Where are they getting this from? In the Bible, it doesn't speak about that. And people, with my Bible, and I'm not putting any one religion down, but my Bible do not speak of 3 or 4 genders, it speaks of 2. And that's what I believe in. I'm not putting anyone down.
But I want to get that. We got about 2 minutes left. Also, in this issue of confusion, people of faith. What would you tell people? I know you're a man of faith, but what would you tell people of faith, and maybe people who don't have faith, of what they can do on the spiritual side, or how do you think faith can start to make clear what is confusion now?
What people can do is really, really get back to their faith and having faith and praying. And really holding their faith as being true and not waffling with it. Listening to someone in Washington telling you how to live your faith when they don't even know themselves, doesn't seem that they have a faith. And this started, when they decided to move God from, the Pledge of Allegiance. They decided to move God from swearing people in. And people should have spoke up then, but we don't have to worry about what happened in the past. Let's worry about what's going on right now. And the people in America, we should just say, no, we're not going to stand for that, because we did elect the people to office. And we have to speak out. I think what Trump did at CPAC is wake a lot of people up. And I think people just have to say, no, we're not going to stand for this. We're not going to do this here and fight for it, because we do have a faith. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to put anyone's faith down, but my faith do not talk about separation. My faith do not talk about they talk about 2 gender. My faith talks about, togetherness, forgiveness, and I think that's the way things really are. And when you're doing a live thing, I think you have your dog that's doing things.
How about them dogs? Hey, Herschel, could you just can you hang on for 1 second? I just want to hold you over the break and just get all your social media, how people. Herschel Walker, a patriot and great American, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return in the War Room with Herschel Walker. We got Doug Collins, John Fredericks, got an entire lineup here. Also going to go through the CPAC. Raheem Kassam's going to break it all down for us. Jason Jones. We've got the California, the biggest populist movement, the biggest grassroots movement in the history of California. We recall the governor. We've got it all today in the War Room. Be back in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back here in the War Room. We are online with one of the great American patriots today, a man of faith, one of the greatest athletes this nation has ever produced, and a leader, entrepreneur, statesman, really. Herschel, one thing we pride ourselves in the War Room, we're not really a talk radio or really a TV show. We're essentially a platform so that people can get engaged and actually volunteer, either become precinct committeemen, volunteer for the recall effort in California. We put up every day all these sites that people can actually become active, so they're not passive, they engage. What would be your recommendation in a time of confusion, as you say it? What would be your recommendation to our audience of what Herschel Walker would recommend? How do they get engaged in trying to fight for and save their country?
Well, I think one of the major things that people first to get involved with, and for myself, I tell people, you can go to at Herschel Walker or the real Herschel 34 and see what I'm doing, and even at my company, renmanfood.com. But I tell people to educate yourself. And when the election was going on, that's one of the things that I did a great deal. I started reading, educating myself, and being aware of things that didn't look real. Right now, if you just look and see what's going on, you can tell that there's something that smells here. There's something that smells that is not right. And if it smells like a skunk and it looks like a skunk, it's a skunk. And we know that. And people are not dumb. And that's why when people start doing is just don't listen to this administration. Just don't listen to your friends. Educate yourself on what's going on. Educate yourself on what's going on. Get back into your faith. Don't let them take that away from you by saying, stay out of churches, wear all these masks, wear 3 or 4 masks, take care of yourself and take care of your loved ones. And I think that's what people got to do more than anything, to start educating themselves on America. Educate yourself on America, what America stands for.
Herschel, how do people get access to you? Can you give those your Twitter, all your social media, and your website? How do people follow Herschel Walker more and find out more about Herschel Walker? This show goes all over the world. So, and I know I can tell from our live stream right now, you've got a lot of new fans. So how do people get access to you?
People can go to at Herschel Walker on my Twitter, and they can go to the real Herschel 34. On my Instagram, and then you can go to my company, which is RenaissanceManFood .com, and you can see some things that I'm doing because I do speak out things I see that I think is unfair, defunding the police, which I've always worked with the law enforcement, and I know that's a terrible thing, and anything dealing with our military, which I'm a big military man, and so I give a shout out to our military, our police, all our first responders, which I think is the key. I'm sort of upset with the teachers today because we have to teach our kids. It doesn't seem that they want to teach anyone right now, which is terrible. Education is so important in my eyes to everyone in succeeding.
Herschel, thank you. Very honored to have you as our first guest on 1690 AM as we launch in Metro Atlanta throughout the state of Georgia today. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming on.
Also, Steve,
yes,
I want to say also I have a program called Patriot Support. I forgot about that one. People can also follow me on Patriot Support, which is a program that I try to remove the mental health or illness with the military. Okay. So that is a big program that I've been doing for 12 years. So they can follow me there as well.
It's Patriot Support. Is that one word? Can you give it to that again? Because we'll put it in the live stream.
Yes. Patriot Support, and that is 2 words, Patriots, and then it's support, and it's a military program I've been doing for 12 years where I try to remove that stigma of mental health out of the military. So normally I was at a base every 3 weeks, and I work with a group, UHS hospitals. So I've been doing that. So they can follow me there.
A servant's heart there, Herschel Walker. Thank you very much. Great American. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the kind of leadership that's going to get us through this, right? You talk about confusion. That's clarity right there. And that type of leadership and that kind of clarity and that kind of servant's heart is what this show is all about. Very, very powerful. Very honored to start off in Georgia today with one of the greatest Georgians, one of the sons of Georgia that have really made a mark, not just in their state, the country, but the world. I want to go to John Fredericks now. We're going to get Doug Collins on here in a second as soon as we get him booted up. John, congratulations today as you start the John Fredericks Radio Network starts to expand throughout my beloved South and then parts farther west. But talk to us about Georgia. Talk about why you're doing this.
Well, we launched our new network, WMLB. By the way, for the studio, I'm getting feedback. If you guys can cut that because I'm getting the double audio.
Okay.
Okay, so we started WMLB AM 1690 to bring a platform. I gotta take these out, Steve.
Okay.
To bring a platform to Georgia for people to be engaged, to feel safe, to be in a situation where we can have action. It's doable. We can spread the word. Talk radio is the last bastion of free speech left in America. That's why we're continuing to expand it, Steve, and why this is so critical that people not only have an avenue to be heard and to come together as a community, but to also be in a position to do something about it. Talk is cheap. You got to act, as you have been saying for some time.
Last thing, I know we're having some technical problems, but tell us about what's your thoughts of CPAC yesterday, of the speech of President Trump's, really the first reappearance officially within 5 weeks of Biden being taking the oath of office. Give us your summary of CPAC overall and also the president's speech.
I've been going to CPAC since 1975. That's a long time. I'd have to have an abacus to figure out how long it is. The number one most enthusiasm of young people I have seen at CPAC since probably Reagan 1979. It's on a par with that.
Wow.
The number of millennials and young people, women that are fired up about the America First agenda was inspiring to me. It was the best 4 days that I've ever had because it brought everybody back into focus. I thought that the president's speech yesterday was the best speech he gave since the 2016 Cleveland Convention. It was focused. It hit on all the topics. It was down the middle. He was hitting fastball after fastball over the center field wall. There was no nonsense. There was no gibberish. And I think, honestly, Steve, I think that Twitter canceling him in retrospect has been about the best thing that's happened to him.
Wow.
Because he had to go to CPAC yesterday. We got rid of all the nonsense, all the stupid fights with nitwit left-wing reporters in the Brady briefing room, all that stuff that drove people bananas. He couldn't do it. And so what you got yesterday was policy, policy, policy. And look, we've had 6 weeks of Biden. Here's where we were with me. Here's where you are there. Here's the difference. How do you want to go forward? And he outlined a blueprint for success that I think is his platform for 2024 and 2022 in the short term. If you don't have Trump's support in a primary, you're simply going to lose. That's the power he has. Now, there's a risk also that I hope I can mention.
Yep.
Here's the risk. He's surrounded by the same people in the campaign that ran the thing into the ditch in 2020. Bill Stepien, Brad Parscale. I can go on and name
You're going full mean girl here. You're going full mean
these
girl.
people, you know what? These people were a catastrophe. They ran out of money.
Yeah.
They didn't have enough lawyers. They didn't have enough people there.
As you know,
they spent all the money on staff. They didn't run advertising. We got to call them out.
Reasonable men can disagree.
And now they're advising them again.
Reasonable men can disagree. As I argue, we won a massive victory on November 3rd, and we didn't close it. But hey, that's because a whole bunch of
did he put his hand on the Bible, or did Biden put his hand in the Bible? They ran out of money, Steve. In the final 4 weeks, they had to cut advertising in every swing state we had. Yeah. They didn't have enough lawyers on the ground on game day. You know why? They ran out of money, and they raised $1.3 billion. Where did it go?
I think
it got squandered. Yeah. Somebody has to be accountable for this.
Well, I do. I think I actually think the team. Look, I think they won a big victory on the 3rd. I think the team is fine. I think it really is about him and the policies. What I liked yesterday, he was coming at it about policy. He was on the glass the entire time. It wasn't the speech I anticipated. I thought it'd be much more. I thought it'd be looser, much more give and take, and it wasn't. It was all policy. But John, once again, John Fredericks Radio Network. Reasonable men can disagree. We disagreed at 7:30 in the morning on your show. Love you. Keep grinding. So proud to be part of your network.
Thank you, Steve.
We're going to go now to Doug Collins, one of the leaders of this movement. And Doug, appreciate you hanging out. We finally get you booted up. Just real quickly, because we got to go to break. We need to keep you over. Just we got a minute. Walk us through what you thought. What was Doug Collins' first impressions? Did we lose Collins? Okay, we're going to pick him back up.
Oh, good.
We've had a couple. Yeah, Raheem Kassam, jump in.
Now I have the mic. Yeah. Look, I think John makes some good points. I mean, those are the questions I think maybe for a little later on about the staffing complement that the president has now. But I'll tell you a little story just to underscore what John's been saying. You know, immediately after the election, I went to Philadelphia. And as I walked into the Philly operation a couple of days after, I said, well, where's the Pennsylvania election lawyer? And everyone turned to me and were like, there isn't one. We don't have one. And I think there is a broader thing. Now, look, lessons can be learned. Hopefully that team has learned those lessons about what happened in the run-up, being underprepared for the steal, being underprepared for what Time Magazine described. And so I think John has some good points on that. The president himself, President Trump, needs to understand and internalize. And I think that's a process that will keep happening. Precisely what happened and who did it.
But
who was behind it?
But, you know, you got signal and noise. I think, to me, the signal was that yesterday, I thought, was a terrific speech in the fact of how he came out and had gravitas. It was a counter to Biden's, and it talked about signal, not noise. He could have come up there and gone full Trump, as you know, CPAC that audience.
Plenty of time for that.
Played off the audience, and he didn't. He laid out really a kind of a government in exile speech. Okay, we're trying to get Doug Collins as soon as we get back in the war room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Now with 38.4 million downloads on the podcast. Of course, nationwide on radio. We're also on the dish. We're on the satellite. We're on cable, live streaming. Also subtitled in Mandarin, and put out to the diaspora of the Chinese people. 250 million throughout the world. Also blown through the firewall later in the day into mainland China, so that our vast audience of Lao Beijing, old 100 names, right, the deplorables of China, get to hear the voice of freedom, right, and as we support them in their great struggle against the totalitarian dictatorship of the Chinese Communist Party. Remember, there's 1.4 billion people in China, men and women in China, and only 90 million are in the Chinese Communist Party. Later in the show, Jason Jones, the conservative traditional Catholic, that's the great filmmaker, is going to talk to us about Christian bookstores inadvertently, I think, taking product from the slave labor camps of China. We're going to get into all of that a little bit later. I want to bring in now on 1690 WMLB in Atlanta, the metro Atlanta area, where John Fredericks is now broadening out throughout the South, the John Fredericks Radio Network. I'm very honored being a kid from Richmond, Virginia, to now be on the air in Atlanta 6 days a week in the morning and 5 days a week at 5 o'clock at night. New show, The Doug Collins Show, 3 to 4 p.m. And here's what I love about Doug Collins. This is a fire breather. Go to the dictionary, look at fire breather. You got Doug Collins right there. Doug, I know we're pressed for time. We've had some technical issues, but people want to know what Doug Collins thinks of the president's speech yesterday at CPAC and CPAC overall, sir.
Hey, Steve, wasn't it good to see him again yesterday? Wasn't it good to see him out there doing what he does? You know, there's a lot of things that presidents do, but the one of the things that President Trump always did was connect with people from that platform. And yesterday he came out and did what I believe we've got to do for the 2022, 2024, and that is lay out the conservative message. Steve, I am sick of...
Just dropped. We just lost it. I want to go to, let's try to reboot that. They've had some weather
storms last
night, big storms throughout the South and the mid-Atlantic. Your assessment
of the speech,
I think,
of the occasion,
overall,
of his demeanor,
I want to take
all different.
I want to take CPAC first, then I want your analysis of the speech.
Look, CPAC, I think broke a few people's hearts with the mask mandates and that sort of thing. I think having some of the critical people,
but the Hyatt hotels in the Orlando tried to do that. They tried to. Just give me a thumbs up when we got Doug. Okay, we don't need a text. We'll just hit me. My producer, my in.
So the Hyatt did what?
The Hyatt tried to break the spirit of the young people there with the mask.
But here's the thing. You tell people you're going down to an America uncancelled event, and you're holding it in Florida for a specific reason.
And you're canceled.
And you're masked, and all of that. So I think that was a little bit of a damp squib for people. I think they'll forgive it, though, given that it's not in the ACU or CPAC's control. It is hotels that did that. Besides that, you know, I saw a conference that again, I said this last week. I saw a conference that wasn't necessarily for anything. It was lots of people that people were against. There was lots of anti-socialism, lots of anti-cancellation, and I get all that, and all that was great. Nobody's saying the speakers weren't great. They were.
But that's
the
what you
lineup
have to
was
do.
great.
But hang on. You know this, in narrative building, that's how you have to start off in opposition. I'm against this.
No, I think you start off on the front foot, and that's what I would have liked to see the president doing more yesterday as well. President Trump's speech last night, as I listened to it, was a lot of the same. Here's where we differ from Biden. People know that. That audience especially knows that. Let me tell you a quick story.
But that speech the speech was not for the room.
Look, here's the thing that frustrates me, and it won't frustrate most people because they didn't get this experience. But when I went in to see President-elect Trump 2 days after he had won in 2016,
you and Nigel Farage sneaking up the elevator beyond my grasp,
snuck past the Secret Service, all of it, and we go in and we sit down, and he starts just riffing on these ideas of repatriation of profits from pipelines to states, and all of these things. And he was just riffing like positive, forward thinking, moving the ball forward, disintermediating from what the establishment does. Look, everybody knows, and I think everybody really respects and loves the fact that President Trump can go up there, speak for, an hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer, and set out the stall that's clearly, and set out the difference, the distinction. Politico even did it this morning.
But he did a compare and contrast I thought was very powerful. He took on the Biden administration about the radical nature of the Biden administration, the really, truly radical nature. Because remember, they're putting the soft face of Joe Biden up there, Sleepy Joe.
Right.
But they're quite radical. I thought the compare and contrast was powerful, and particularly when you look at the highlight of, hey, here's what we stand for, and here's what we're going to be driving forward.
Yeah, and I don't think the Sleepy Joe stuff really works, by the way. I think it has to be... Joe Biden is maybe sleepy, but he is also very dangerous. And it may be the fact that he's dangerous because he's sleepy.
That's the point.
Right? But I don't think it just works to be like, oh, Sleepy Joe, he doesn't know what's going on.
No. I'm saying they're putting the nice face on it where they do these radical policies that are in your face.
For sure. I mean, these nice policies, by the way. Remember, the White House has shut down its comment section. It's shut down its petition section. He hasn't held a press conference yet. He doesn't put his schedule public. This is what they're calling a transparent White House.
There's no visitor log. No visitor log.
No visitor logs. Who's going in there?
They could have done the visitor log in the very first day. They talked about the visitor log, right? I don't think the visitor log's up.
No, that's correct.
They're talking about going back. Oh, they want to release President Trump's visitor log. I'm not so sure the visitor log's online. I've been looking for it.
No, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Even Politico reported that this morning. The White House visitor log no longer exists. He will not give a solo press conference. This is dangerous. What's going on here? Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness. What happened to that? Have they scratched that off their paper now?
But I think that's what President Trump. This is why I think they made a strategic decision. We're going to give a long speech. It's going to be a lot of policy or a lot of talking about immigration, talking about economic nationalism. Now, look, the hardcore of this wing of the movement wanted more economic nationalism, more details, more. And so you're not going to. But by the way, if you've done that, people said, "Hey, for CPAC, it's too boring." Remember, it's also very difficult in that room. And let's talk about the room.
Yeah,
the room was
the Odell room.
Well, no, you've got it. It has to be separated. So you had the cubicles. It kind of looked like cubicle culture. People obviously got there early and got their places. In the room, as we reported, and I think Real America's Voice did a great job of showing, in the room was older demographically than the young energy that was outside the room that came in and out. And obviously for the president's speech, you got to get there very early to get a seat and get located.
Oh, hours and hours.
So I think strategically and really setting up as a benchmark. This is what we're for. This is what we had rolling on. This is what this guy's doing today. This is the benchmark. And wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. It was not the one thing. Although people loved it, it wasn't. He didn't come off the glass much. There weren't many riffs. There weren't many ad libs, which I think is it shows you what he felt, I believe, is the seriousness. I mean, we could have gotten a rally speech. Yeah. You could have gotten the rally speech where he goes off and people love it and he's feeding off the audience and he's doing the call and response, right? The call and response. You didn't see that. And I think the reason you didn't see it, he wanted to set a benchmark, right? remember the if you look at the mainstream media today, to the degree that they covered it, right? It was the lies of Trump, the Liapalooza. We'll play that later. Also, I do think it reinforced one thing you and I have talked about, and on the show we've talked about. The venue, look, November 3rd is not going away. John Fredericks is very critical of the staff. I was saying, hey, to my mind, they won, right? We didn't close because of a host of other reasons, right? Some were acts of commission, some were acts of omission. But you see that, I think that to reinforce that, and I think it shows the weakness we've got to continue to pursue this. We're pursuing it in state legislatures. We're pursuing it in courts. Georgia today's got this little bit of a ruckus down there because they're voting on the. You've got to show an ID for the mail-in, the absentee votes. We should have adjudicated this in the Senate trial. That was the perfect venue. Or if we don't get that, Nancy Pelosi's commission. Right? If that's ever agreed to, Mitch McConnell can't sit there and say, hey, I only want to do about the 6th and things around the 6th. Right. President Trump bringing that up yesterday, I thought was important. But you can also see that since you've lost an official venue, talking about it in a speech, particularly to your partisan group, is not going to be what we need to continue to litigate and continue to keep November 3rd. We can't keep November. Did we have Doug back on? Okay, let's try Doug. Doug, go ahead again.
I do get a response later, though.
Okay, fine. Yeah, we're going to get into this. Reasonable men can disagree. Doug, so give us your thoughts once again on the CPAC speech and where the president is and how he fired off the football.
Well, look, I think it did well yesterday. I mean, I'm listening, as you said, reasonable men can disagree. I think what we've got to do is we've got to get outside this bubble. I mean, it's one thing to talk to the CPAC crowd. It's one thing to give what they did, and I think he laid that policy out. But, Steve, you said something just a second ago that's really true. It was not for the people in that room. The people in that room are convinced. Yep. We don't need to continue to convince the ones who are already convinced. We've got to actually get out there and, again, do like Reagan, do like, our conservatives in the past, is we've got to actually get out there and say why these matter. We can't just simply rely on bumper stickers. And I think the president started laying that groundwork yesterday. And I think that's what has drove the media crazy, because they were looking for the giant rifts in the party and everything else. And he came out and gave speech they have to deal with.
Well, let's talk about that. The policies that bring it together, because you got this kind of globalist aspect of it, and you got his populist economic nationalist. As Doug Collins sees it, a guy that's as engaged now as ever as when you were in Congress, what do you see the two or three lanes, the two or three verticals that you think we can press the case to bring in more working class people, more middle class people, more entrepreneurs, less establishment, less big donors, less global corporations, but bring in and really do a realignment in this country politically?
First off, immigration. He hit back on it again yesterday, and I was glad to hear that. Steve, how many times from the very first when he went in there, immigration was one of the very first things the president talked about. It was the thing that resonated. I could go to diners, Waffle House, wherever, and people understood, seal our border, protect our jobs, have a legal immigration system at work. Number one, immigration. Number two, I think this lockdown issue right now, where the Biden and the rest of the country are taking our free enterprise system and moving it toward a controlled government system, that is something that matters. People will understand. I've had business people come to me already and say, look, we're already starting to see the regulatory burden, the fear of the way that they're moving on us, especially from our banking and other industries. That's our second lane. That's your free enterprise lane. You got the immigration, you got the free enterprise lane. And then the third one is to focus on this, we call it in cancel culture. Folks, I'm really beginning to believe folks are just turning out cancel culture. Let's talk about it for what it really is. The taking of freedoms guaranteed by the Bill of Rights. That's all this is. It's not a cancel culture. It's taking away of rights, and with whether it be transgender, whether it be the family, whether it be the shutting down of religious liberties. These are the focus on free enterprise and free speech that we've got to have. So immigration, free enterprise, and the freedoms are guaranteed on the Constitution. Those are the verticals that get the average person back engaged with us.
Okay, we got about a minute. How do you think, when you say engage, our audience is an activist audience. In about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, what do you want them to do today?
Well, number one I want to do is turn into, as we know, your show, my show at 3 o'clock. John Fredericks Radio Network, WMAB out of Atlanta. Just go download the app, listen to us. We're going to begin to engage in how we then take this outside of the party and back to getting these people in. We've got to have a vision that is beyond what we currently see.
And Georgia is the key state. Georgia is the key that picks the lock. That's why we've launched this station down here. Doug, thank you very much. 3 o'clock, Doug Collins will be back with the Doug Collins, the initial launch of the Doug Collins Show. Doug, I can't wait to, I'll be listening and hopefully in your live stream commenting. So thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Y'all take care.
That's a fire breather right there. Remember, the president didn't have a bigger backer on Capitol Hill, and Doug Collins took some hits and kids back up. I got to tell you, a smart, tough guy. You want that show, 3 p.m. today to 4 p.m., the Doug Collins Show. We're going to give his social media coordinates when we return in just a moment to the War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're continuing on CPAC. Let's go. Look, I realize there's a lot of people in the audience, a lot of people in the live stream. And by the way, we have it up in Telegram. We have it on Real America's Voice. We've got it at warroom.org. You can jump in there. Let us know what you're thinking. We monitor them all throughout the day. There are people disappointed. Some people wanted a rally speech. Some people wanted more of a CPAC speech. Mm-hmm. Some people wanted more give and take, call and response, all that. Maybe more energy. Maybe something different. Some people said, "Hey, the immigration stuff is the same." So, look, people have opinions. And I think that's great. I do think the thing to remember, what I took from it, was that it was very strategic in the fact of it was long, but it was relatively detailed. And he laid out the counter argument to Biden, basically making the case that, hey, I had a first term, I won a second term, right? This is what the second term would have been, and here's how we're counter to Joe Biden. I think in doing it in a serious way, I do believe that speech was not really for the base and not really for the Trump movement so much as just his presence there, as laying out into what Doug Collins was saying to try to say, and because remember, this unity thing between the establishment and the Republicans is a false narrative. This is about policies that are populist, policies are economic nationalist, policies are traditionalist for our sovereignty. And there's a huge group of working class Hispanics and working class African Americans we know that are out there in middle class that are prepared to vote for this because it's in their self-interest to vote for it, and they know it takes the country to the next level. Okay, that's where I think this argument has to be made. We don't have to accommodate the globalist in the donor wing of the Republican Party. To me, should just be cut loose. If you're gonna back these globalist policies that play into the Party of Davos narrative, and particularly kowtow to the Chinese Communist Party because they're your business partners, there's no accommodation there, and that's why I think this speech was there, because this speech is sellable. The ideas in the speech are sellable into the Rio Grande Valley. They're sellable to working class African Americans and middle class African Americans. They're sellable to the entrepreneurs that are rising, and it's sellable to millennials when they see it. That's why I think the power of it. And listen, was it his most exciting speech? No. And although John Fredericks loved it because he didn't play the call and response to the CPAC audience, and he didn't play the call and response to the Trump movement. Mr. Raheem Kassam.
Yeah, look, I suppose it depends on what you're trying to do. I'm
trying to save the Republic,
and I'm not trying to say and I'm not saying it was a bad speech. I don't think anybody's saying it was a bad speech.
Let me take it different. Hang on. No.
I need to define it.
Okay.
People are saying it's a good speech, and some people are saying it was a great speech. I think it was a good speech, but like you said, you put the teleprompter up in front of him, you're not getting Donald Trump.
Listen, let me tell you something else. Signal, not noise. I think what Trump did was very sophisticated in a way of saying. They all say this is a cult of personality. And they all say they hear it just because they love me, right? And he starts off with hey, do you miss me? Then he goes on to a speech not really about him, but about his ideas and why he's counter to Joe Biden and the radical ideas. That's, to me, the signal. When I saw the speech is that it had been very easy for him to walk in there. In fact, I said one of the things I said, hey, why even be on the glass at all? Walk in with an index card with 5 bullet points, or just go off the top of your head and call and response. Yeah. That would have reinforced the cult of personality, the cult of Trump, which the left's all over in the Never Trump crowd. This was not that, although it was an hour and a half long, because it had a seriousness and a gravitas to it that is about Trump's ideas on immigration, Trump's ideas about Title IX and the radical nature of what they're coming with the women's sports, what he had to say about the economy, what he had to say about America First, what he had to say about China, about being bought and paid for. That, to me, is the importance of the speech, and that's why. And I had a lot of people saying, "Hey, where I am in my life, I needed a rally speech," right?
Why does the left get all over him for the cult of personality stuff?
Because no politician,
Because that's what they're afraid of.
yes, well, no politician has had people gravitate. That remember, all the guys that you deal with in the mainstream media are all nerds that came up through from the time they were 15 to 16 years old, news junkies, political junkies. That's part of the ecosystem in the apparatus. Remember, and when let's go back to the 16 campaign, you had every vertical covered from Bush to Rubio to Cruz to Rand Paul, whether it's libertarian, whether it's Dr. Ben Carson, every vertical that the Republican Party, the donor class, for literally 20 or 30 years, that had Chris Christie, you had every vertical covered. Big state, moderate governor, all the way to libertarian and Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, limited government. You had all that. And he went through that like a scythe through grass, right? Now, part of that is his dynamic personality, but he also had a set of positive. Look, you know better than anybody. When we first started the thing at Breitbart, people would be all over me. You can't say populist, right? You can't say populist. You certainly can't say nationalist, and you can't say economic nationalism. We're for Austrian School of Economics. We're for free trade. You are heretics. Remember, they would say you guys are heretics. I had to do panels for 2 years called The Uninvited at CPAC, talking about guys like you that were going after radical jihad. The corporate donors didn't want to hear from them anymore, right? They didn't want to hear from a lot of populist ideas, a lot of Peter Schweizer's corruption. Remember, they weren't embracing Peter Schweitzer at the time, that crony capitalism.
Was that back when CPAC was literally canceling people? And now they're running America on cancel.
Well, no, because they changed management. They got rid of Al Cardenas, and the guy said no. But here's my point. He's clearly a dynamic and charismatic figure, unlike we have seen since Ronald Reagan. There's no doubt about that. And people are gravitated to that leadership, that gravitate to that strength. To me, what was important was he could have played to that very easily and given people the noise. He gave the signal, which is these are ideas that stand. It was a compare and contrast. Look,
I know you're filibustering here. You know what's going on here.
You're not shy about that.
I was waiting for you to run out of steam.
Here's what's so interesting. You used to do this with Nigel all the time.
That's the point. And here's the metric.
You compare and contrast all the time to the Tory parties. The most powerful stuff you guys did at UKIP was exactly what Trump did yesterday. The compare and contrast of where they are.
But here's the metric. Here's the metric we always used to use with Nigel. He used to call me up, 6 a.m. the next day. What's the tail on this thing?
Well, it depends. The mainstream media doesn't want any tail on it.
There's no tail on it. There's no tail on it in the MAGA right. There's no tail on the speech. Go to any conservative site right now. Nobody's got it up. Nobody's humping this thing. Nobody's pulling out the clips and going boom, 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 boom. I agree with you. Great policy speech.
No, you don't.
But I didn't want a policy speech. Okay?
You do agree it's a great policy speech.
Good policy speech, but I didn't want a policy speech.
Chris Hayes was whining on Friday night on MSNBC. It's all grievance, no policy. Trump gave you policy, not much grievance. We're going to return in a moment. Jason Jones, Darren Beatty from Revolver, Tom DeCaro from California.